What is up, guys? It's the Sound Alchemist, part of One Mind Syndicate, and today I'm back to talk about Warhammer 40K. So before I dive into the meat and potatoes of this video, I do want to say that I just watched Rebel Moon, which takes a lot of inspiration from like Star Wars and, surprisingly, Warhammer 40K, and I was really looking forward to it because you've got like the Imperium is the Imperium in that you have the Slain King, which is kind of like the Emperor, and you have a character in there by the name of Belisarius. And that reminded me, oh yeah, we had a novel that came out with Belisarius talking to another awesome mind in the galaxy, Fabius Bile, or who I like to call Fabulous Bill. So these two actually have a meeting of mind in Gene Father, and it's really interesting to see how these two, which one could even say, the smartest people in the galaxy, what do they have to say to one another? Because obviously when you think of Warhammer 40K, you think of war, you think of Space Marines fighting against the horrors of the galaxy. However, when you have these two people that are as smart as they are, they're not going to resort to just shooting or killing anybody. They actually want to gain knowledge, and a meeting of the minds between them two can literally lead to some huge leaps in technology and innovation for both of them. A Chaos Space Marine devoted to Slaanesh and a tech priest of the Mechanicus of Mars. They have a lot to gain from one another. So let's go ahead and read this excerpt from Gene Father to see what the two biggest brains in the galaxy have to say to one another. A misty figure formed in the middle of the room, already walking towards Cawl. Formless for the first steps, it became more and more real, almost solid, as the skulls adjusted their focal lengths to enable full coherence. Then the figure came properly into being, tall, transhuman, a space marine of the oldest sort, from the highest and mightiest of days. He was a singular example. A machine akin to a mechanical arachnid squatted malevolently on his reactor pack. He had long, wispy hair, a man-skin cloak that spoke of cruelty. He grasped a cane with a skull head handle, which he swung forward briskly with each step. Cawl's extensive memory core immediately matched the cane. Not only a support, but a torment, a weapon once owned by a demon. And only one man carried that weapon. The Space Marine stopped before him, amusement wrinkling his face. He grasped the cane in both hands and gave a little bow from the waist, that he was as much respectful as he watched mocking. Belisarius Cawl, I presume, said Fabius Bile. Bile stood in a pool of holographic light, the glow of it reflecting off the artifacts in the mausoleum ominous, leading them the semblance of movement, as if he were surrounded by an attentive audience. Cawl didn't like the effect, and with a forceful thought managed to activate the main lumens on the high ceiling. They came on loudly. Bile faded a little bit, losing his illusion of solidity. A skull was hovering directly behind his head, presenting Bile whenever he actually was, with a line of sight as if he had actually been there. This is a fine collection, said Bile, looking around. The skull circled, tracking his movements. I approve. It is very personal to me, said Cawl. I had gathered, said Bile. Curious, I had not chosen this place to meet with you. The technology I have been loaned is precise, but not that precise. Perhaps the hand of serendipity is at work here. He bent down to examine an artifact held in the soft glow of a stasis field. You are Fabius Bile, if I'm not mistaken, said Cawl. Bile turned from the object. The serval skull's eyes lit up Bile's with a red, infernal glow. My reputation precedes me. He stood and moved on to something else that caught his eye, passing through a fragment of an Indranil null field generator mounted on a block. How Cawl had come across the artifact and what significance it once held for him, he had no idea. You are the original, the genuine Pater Mutatus, not one of his clones, am I correct? Bile shrugged. Does it matter? They are me and I am them. Geniuses all. Cawl let out a bark of laughter that boomed through his maxillary shield. They say I am arrogant. Not unfairly, I suppose, but I think I may have met my match in that regard. As Cawl talked, he tasked one of his sub-minds to put a trace on the incoming hololith. Even though the signal had now come to a focal point, tracking it was surprisingly difficult. The feed was thin, weak, still scattered by the Avernus siblings' endless stellar bickering. Only clever modulation of the frequency allowed it to carry enough information to transmit Bile's semblance into the mausoleum. One thing was sure, if Bile was using hololithic means of communication, he must be close. For a moment, Cawl considered activating a ship-wide alert, but decided that might well cause his unexpected guest to withdraw. Despite his misgivings, Cawl found himself wanting to hear what this notorious heretic Astarte had to say. Bile smiled. I am arrogant. What genius is not? I am a genius like you. A wise man acknowledges what he is good at. You will find no false modesty in this room, but he also acknowledges his failings. Acknowledgement of one's talents cannot be accompanied by blindness to one's shortcomings. Otherwise, the wise man is not wise at all. How very humble, says Cawl. Humility is a virtue most of those born in our era neglect. I would venture that you have little time for yourself. Little, Cawl says. I find humility gets in the way of my self-belief. Bile pulled a thoughtful face. Take my friendly advice. As one scientist to another, you should embrace humility. You should look within yourself to complete honesty. You will be better for acknowledging your fallibility. I never said I was ineffable. I believe you are, though, said Bile, reaching out with a phantom hand, speculatively passing it through a glass case and the broken skull inside. Take your great work, your Primaris Space Marines. Bile bent low, peering into the skull's empty eyes. I admit that I was excited to see the work of this supposed genius. You, I mean. I got that. Thank you. Cawl had enough of a handle on the transmission now to begin to follow it, but it was heavily encrypted. He set to work breaking the codes. What did you think of my work, as one scientist to another? I find it disappointing, Bile says. He had a hard face with nothing of kindness to it. I found little interest, Cawl. I have examined your work extensively, and it is nothing revolutionary, merely variations on the same tired old theme. Muscle-swollen super soldiers, bigger, stronger, more annoyingly self-righteous. He gave a sneer and moved on to a crystal claw thrusting up from a plinth. The light of this projection glittered through the transparent material. Calling the Primaris Marines an improvement might technically be true, but you cannot improve upon a flawed design. Bile continued to pace around his phantom, passing through the cabinets and displays. I did what was required, said Cawl. He was irked at Bile's criticism. The Primaris Marines were a masterwork. Could he not see? He pushed this emotion aside. Why should he feel stung by the words of this monster? His wounded pride was disrupting the work of his subminds tracing the lithocast. You probably did. The stiff old bastard Gilliman probably loved them. But you and I? Bile dropped his voice to a constipated whisper. We are generators of rare repute. We both know you could have done better. Perhaps. Now come. Bile stood up straight. It is a poor craftsman who only delivers what is expected of him. An artist always aims to exceed. Always. You understand I only had 10,000 years. Are you mocking me? More myself, says Cawl. I had to design a whole new suit of weaponry, armor, vehicles, and equipment to go with them. If we are going to be fair, which I think we should be, the Lord Primarch wanted an improvement upon the designs of his creator. That is what I gave him. I think, under the circumstances of my commission, the last request rather trumped any benefit to me showing off any supposed artistry I may or may not have. Don't you? I have seen the results of your art, Bile. You are not a scientist. You are a torturer. Bile turned glowingly, doubled eyes upon the Archmagos, suddenly angry. You are naive. You believe I have turned to chaos? He shrugged his temper just as suddenly as it came, or at least hidden. I suppose that is understandable. It is also not true. These gods, my old brothers talk endlessly of, they are a sickness, a discordant note that destroys the harmony of the music of the spheres. There are no gods, Archmagos. There is only time, and being, and thinking things that brew themselves up out of the two. That is a way of looking at it, says Cawl. I am sure it would surprise you to learn that I wish to do what you wish to do. And what would that be? Come now, said Bile, shaking his head. I want to save humanity. A fine sentiment for the man in the man-skin leather, says Cawl. Most of the time when people want to save people, it's not to add them to their wardrobe. If I'm not mistaken, you have been associating with the traitors that threaten to plunge our entire reality into an endless hell for the last 10 millennia. Cawl stalked around Bile, rising up over him on his motive carriage. You have bolstered their armies, you have aided their schemes. When you have not contented yourself with only abiding them, you have led yourself in war against humanity. Your name is a byword for terror across hundreds of worlds. Wherever you go, your surgeon's knife is red with the blood of blameless folk. I have files of the things you have made from the living tissues of imperial citizens, slaughtered civilians, populations tortured into new grotesque forms. I have this sickening feeling that you are pleading innocence with me, and I am astounded. Cawl leaned in. Yes, astounded. You are a monster. Bile looks up with a condescending smile. I have been called a monster before, and by people that would surprise you. Look at yourself. Do you think you would not give any child nightmares? I may not be pretty, but I am nothing like you, says Cawl. No, you are not. You are not as good as I am. Bile began to pace again, gesturing with torment. I vivisected one of your creations. More than one, actually. But this one sticks in the mind. He was ancient, almost as old as you or I. He was taken from a world far from Terra. He made a show of musing, kidnapped. That is the word what happened to him. Ripped from his family without permission, experimented on for millennia. Thousands of years of pain to be turned into a living weapon. And you call me a monster? We are both monsters, the pair of us. If I indeed am a monster, then I am a monster on the right side of history, Cawl says. I say the same, Bile laughed loudly. There is no right side. There is no good and bad. Only two forces, equally as bad as the other, locked in a death spiral. The Imperium is as rotten, as degenerate, as the followers of Abaddon are. Then why do you help them rather than us? You could have used your talents for good. What do you think I am trying to do? Bile scoffs. What do you think we would have happened if I came back to Terra after Fulgrim fell? Would they have been there to welcome me with open arms? To hail my genius, my contributions to humanity? Would they have shot me? If I had come back later, after Horus's failure, would they have burned me alive instead? There, that's progress for you. If I have my history correct, and please note this is a rhetorical question, then I would say balderdash, says Cawl. You spent hundreds of years leading the fallen children of the Emperor willingly. And you serve a moribund empire ruled by a corpse that feasts upon the souls of his subjects. There is no justice. There is no kindness there. We are at the mercy of false gods on all sides. Bile moves to another exhibit. Oh, I can see where this is going now, says Cawl. This is the part where you tell me you wish to free us from all gods. By what? Replacing them with yourself? I have been worshipped as a god, says Bile. I found no taste for it. I have also heard this song before. I have enough in my life with those who speak in nothing but dramatic metaphor, snapped Bile. Songs, legends, no more. Will Cawl. Will that save us? Not stories. He held up his hand and clenched it. My will, your will. I know you want to stop all of this, to drive chaos out, as do I. Now the evil genius disclaims his plans. You are a cliché in a horrifying coat. Bile bares his thin gray teeth. I have nothing to lose by telling you what I need, Cawl, or what I wish to achieve. I have everything to gain. Humanity is weak and imperfect. As we exist now, as a species, we are finished. Don't argue with me on this point. Your machine priests spend your lives trying to mitigate the frailties of our kind. Many people, the Emperor included, have invested their time in creating superior strains of humanity. Yet none of them had any success. Until now, offered Cawl, there is a surprise. I labored long to create a better race, one that would not fall to chaos, that would not prey endlessly upon its own. For centuries I attempted this, until weary, I became tired of it. I, Fabius Bile, became bored. Well, says Cawl, you have my sympathy there. I became bored because I made fundamental mistakes. I believed that I must control everything, that only I could save the galaxy. I became disillusioned. Knowing that that was impossible, I abandoned my children, cruelly. Some of what you say is right about me. By good fortune, it was the best thing I could have done. Since my reawakening, I have become aware of my new men again, and they have changed. He began to speak quickly, enthusiastically even. You see them, Cawl. They are perfect. They are resistant to the lure of the powers of the warp, physically mighty, invulnerable to age and disease. Their societies are egalitarian and just. All know their place and are satisfied to fulfill their role. I have seen what they have made of themselves, and I am humbled. I know now that the greatest creations must be like children, molded by their maker. I know now that the greatest creations must be like children, molded by their maker but not finished. The greatest creations finish themselves. I have cloned every Primarch, Cawl. They have all failed. If I were more of an arrogant man, I would say that this is certainly the fault of the original material, and not my methods. But I must accept the possibility that I did not have all I needed to create a Primarch successfully. Then the error lay with me. You still want to recreate the Emperor's sons, Cawl said. He wished to keep Bile talking. The algorithms employed by his subminds were steadily chewing through Bile's encryption. Deep in his core, he witnessed their unlocking as streams of numbers that turned green and thereafter gave up their secrets. He was homing in on Bile's location, somewhere within the Arcanist system, in the direction of the galactic core. He would not be far. He could not be. I did, Bile answered. It doesn't work. The first I made were mewling imbeciles, but I got better. I, like you, am still a believer in the ancient methods of discovery, and through observation and elimination, refined my experiments. It got to a point where the last few I made were perfect copies in every way, so perfect they had all the flaws of the originals, included being attracted to the bright flame of damnation. I've come to believe the Emperor's creations are irredeemably touched by the warp, even your beloved Lord and Master. Then you don't mean to repeat this exercise. You wish? Cawl thought a moment. What do you wish? He held up a finger. Aha, that's it. You wish to make something better. A being of your own design, yet similar potential. You have insight, said Bile, with a small bow of his head. I am human. I am imperfect. The Emperor's mistakes rot my body still. As many times as I have created death, I will not live forever. My new men require leadership if they are to take the human race into the future. They need help to survive. I wish to make a king worthy of them, something that avoids all the errors the Emperor committed. Now that is an intriguing plan, says Cawl gravely. An impish feeling was rising in his gut, not helped by Bile's increasing earnestness. Despite the simplicity of what you have achieved with your Primaris Marines, I do adore the elegance of your solutions. You are undoubtedly a genius, Cawl, but you are a generalist. I am a specialist. and I will acknowledge and experience that you never will." "Possibly," says Cawl. Bile still did not perceive the growing twinkle in Cawl's eyes. "Definitely," says Bile. "No one is limitless in ability. If you give me what I desire, you will have played your part in saving mankind. Think, Cawl. The Necrons, the Tyranids, the Orcs. Chaos is not the only existential threat that this galaxy faces. We are too weak as we are to survive. Do not let humanity perish at the hands of its myriad foes. Aid me. Let us put an end to these wars. All these space marines and temples to uncaring gods, these empires." Bile swept his hand dismissively through the air. "These are the labors of lesser men. True scientists like you and I know the value of the great celestial machine, the variety of life and purpose to be found in the stars. Even if you believe your God is behind it and I do not, mankind can and should be the pinnacle of existence. Let us rise above it all. Help me bring peace. Give me the Sancprium Protum, and you will be remembered as a benefactor of a new era. Your name will live forever, enshrined in memory, a great hero to the species of mankind." Cawl looked at Bile, eyes round with surprise, and Bile's hololith looked back at him expectantly. "Well, what do you say, as one scientist to another? Let us cooperate." Cawl looked at Bile's extended hand and then at his face, and he could not help himself any longer. He tried to hold back the flood of amusement, but the dam broke within, and his primary hands flew up to his mouth. Cawl snorted. Bile frowned as Cawl erupted into a fit of giggles that escalated with intensity until he was hooting with mirth. "Are you mocking me?" says Bile. "I come here to speak with you as a respected equal, and you laugh at me?" I'm sorry, tittered Cawl, "but that was just the most precious thing I've heard in 3,000 years. His voice and Vox transmitters hicked together. "You want me to hand over the Sancprium Protum? To you? You want me to give the sum total of all that remains of the Emperor's own work to a Chaos Space Marine? Oh, by the Omnissiah, that is a good one. That is your plan, that I just handed over? That you'll be the architect?" said Cawl. "I'll be your facilitator? So you can fill the universe with Chaos Primaris Marines? I do not need your archive to do that. Your work is simplistic in the extreme. Well then, so you can take the place of the Emperor and the War Master and rule us all for their benefit?" To Cawl's amazement, Bile actually looked hurt. "I knew you would disappoint me," he said. His outstretched hand clenched and withdrew. "It doesn't matter what you wish. Every tyrant starts that way, Fabius Bile. I've crossed your trail before. I've met things that worship you. Godhood is not a choice. Even if you desire to avoid that burden, think about what you are saying. You are standing here talking to me, a prime conduit of the Omnissiah, suggesting that your design alone should replace the sacred form of humanity, that you alone can improve upon his great design, that you are the sole man to save us all." Cawl clapped metal fingers together with a harsh, dismissive noise. "Bravo to you, and I mean that with an enormous amount of withering sarcasm, in case your ego encourages you to misinterpret any scorn as praise. Is it not the belief of your cult that you are to improve upon the work of your God?" snarled Bile. "Now you employ the theological arguments when you run out of nationality?" "Oh, now you employ theological arguments when you run out of rationality," says Cawl. "Improve, yes. Supplant, no. To burn everything down and start again is the urge of the megalomaniac. It was the urge of Horus, of Abaddon, of every messianic warlord since the dawn of time. It is the desire of these gods that you purport your desire. Very well, spurn me. That is your choice. You will come to admit that my improvements to the human stock are superior to any other. You will acknowledge the rectitude of my plan, and you will regret that you turned down a part in it before the end," says Bile. "Millions of tormented mutants suggest otherwise. Honestly, I thought myself stricken by hubris. The skull behind Bile's head looked Cawl deep in the eye. If you will not give me what I require to save humanity, then let it be on your head. I shall instead take it by force. I knew you were going to say that, says Cawl. I have had enough of offers I have no interest in. Be gone from my sight. And there you have it, a meeting of the two biggest minds in the galaxy. And it's pretty cool, like you see them going back and forth at each other, kind of praising each other's work, but at the same time knowing that like they can one-up each other. At the same time, you see the hubris of these guys, like their egos are so inflated, so huge, they both think they can save humanity. And at the end of the day, they probably could if they worked together, but that is never going to happen. At the end of the day, these guys are kind of doing it all for their own purpose, but they're masking it behind like visions of grandeur. They say that they've all been praised as gods. They say that they can improve humanity to an area where humans will rule. And like I said, they probably can, but will we ever see that? No. This is a grim, dark universe where there is only war, and war is what will hold back humanity from ever achieving this hope, this new era of enlightenment. And it sucks, but that's just the way it is, and it's awesome. Another thing that I was thinking throughout this entire passage was, what about other minds in the universe that can come toe-to-toe with them? For example, the homunculus of the Dark Eldar, the Drukhari, those guys literally play with the fabric of reality, and they could achieve things that probably Cawl and Bile never even considered possible. So to see these two guys go toe-to-toe, a battle of the brains, a battle of the minds, really is cool, because most of the time we see battles with fists, with bolters, with knives, power swords, chain swords, and that is cool, but it's also cool to see the inverse of it, a battle of wits and words. So let me know your thoughts down below. What do you think about these two awesome warriors of the Imperium, the fallen scientist and the tech priest of Mars? So yeah, let me know your thoughts down below. And that's all I got for today, guys. If you guys do enjoy these videos, a like, a comment, a subscription would be amazing. Share the video to all your friends. And if you do want to help us out, maybe support us via Patreon or via Super Thanks. And that's all I got for today. This has been the Sound Alchemist, part of One Mind Syndicate, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.